Hi, welcome to Simple Shifts, conversations on life, food, weight, and mindset. That's a mouthful. I'm Martha McKinnon from the blog Simple Nourished Living, and this is Peter Morrison, my partner and brother. Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
Hi, Peter. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. So I'm excited. We're going to start a deeper dive into Mindless Eating by Brian Wansink. It's a book that, as we discussed in the last video, really was a huge shift for me. It was just one of those huge minds was more than just a mindset. It was a whole insight shift where by really reading his book and applying the lessons that it contained, I lost weight from a place where I had been really stuck. I lost weight in a way that felt easily and effortless, and it just stayed off. I've been at or under goal now since that time. And diving back into our notes, that was way back in 2010. So do the math. That's a miracle for me, for somebody who yo-yoed for so long. So I'm excited to share and do a little deeper dive into the first two chapters, 1 and 2 of Mindless Eating. But before we do that, what's anything new and good in your world?
Yeah, where I live, the town opened up a new in one of the public parks, a new pickleball complex. So we've got 17 new courts. Um, so that's been open a couple weeks now. So
And how many times have you played there?
several,
Several?
several. Yep.
And do they
It's
get, I mean,
hard.
do those courts fill up? Do they have people playing pretty much on all those courts? Really?
I've been there both when they weren't and when they were all filled up. So
Okay. That's
weekends are
good.
certainly more popular. But surprisingly enough, it almost seems like nobody works these days because I could be down there on a weekday, midday, and they could be, if not full, three quarters or so full. And it's like, doesn't
I mean,
anybody work
well,
anymore?
is it mostly a sport of like, I mean, I guess I have the mindset that it started in retirement communities, and maybe I have no idea if that's true or not, but
No, it started I'm gonna say in the 50s.
okay.
It was like a summer family thing where they were trying to keep their kids entertained.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
I think a couple families or a couple brothers and various family members sort of invented it.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know the progression through the years and how it spread. I'm not familiar. I
Uh-huh.
just know around 2020, 2021 when um coming out of the lockdowns from
Uh-huh.
the pandemic, people were obviously starved for human interaction,
Right.
and that's when it really blew up
Okay.
socially
Okay.
and became a thing. So
It is a thing.
supposedly well, I've read it's the fastest growing sport in America. I mean, I
Is
don't
it?
know how that's
Uh,
measured or
right.
quantified, but
Well, and we've talked a little bit about, I mean, it has a lot, I mean, it has a lot of positive aspects, I think, which is helping, right? With its growth. It has a,
yeah, being a single, if you're a single person and like the game, you don't need to have people ahead of time. If you could find a public park with courts,
you just
there's
have to show
usually
up. So
Mhm.
again, it follows in suit with a lot we're talking about around, behavior change or how things happen. And it just seems, again, it's easy, right? You don't have to arrange it. You don't have to come up with a time, find a bunch of friends who want to play. You can just go and show up as at a designated area, at a designated time, at a designated location and get to play. And that's a big hurdle in our world where people are just so busy, right? And going in so many directions. If you
Mhm.
were trying to organize that yourself, it could take a lot of effort.
For sure. And it's like, well, days if, I get my work done and I have more time, I could play longer.
Right.
If I can, I might be only able to play for a half hour or an hour, a much shorter time, but you go and you play as long as you can and then you say, sorry guys, I got to leave
Gotta
now
go.
and
Yeah.
people
It's
just
great.
come and go, and it's like, all right, well, see you next time. And so
Right.
it's very casual in that
Yeah.
regard.
And I have a friend, I've made a new friend down here this winter, and he's just a huge, I think I've mentioned he was a huge, huge fan. And they do quite a bit of travel, and that's what he loves about it is he takes his paddle wherever he goes. And, they were in Puerto Vallarta for a month in February. They're going over to Palm Springs for a long weekend to be with family, and he's able to play wherever he goes and keep up
Hmm.
with with something he really enjoys doing, which is cool.
Hmm.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well,
Yeah, it's
I have
exciting.
something that I'm excited to share too, and it's sort of more in alignment with our topic here in terms of uh just mindless and not mindless eating. But when on one of our last conversations, we were talking a lot about just how you have really made it part of your deal to eat slowly.
Hmm.
And I realized that I go in and out of that. I mean, there are times where I have become more mindful around eating slowly and incorporated some techniques. And I realized as part of our conversation that I'd gotten out of that habit. And also the whole concept, I'm really tuning into only eating when I'm hungry because I find like it's so easy just to see something on the counter or be in the pantry to put something away and suddenly, you're just grabbing something because you see it. And so I really tapped in this week to slowing my eating down and just noticing what that did for me in terms of making it easier just to leave food on my plate. I was actually able to slow because I had become back to the clean plate club, it seems, I mean, these habits can be hard to break. And so I was excited about that. And then another really exciting thing that happened on Monday or Tuesday, I go to Spanish class. There's a Spanish class here, and three of us um, take a Spanish lesson with a local woman who are our Spanish teacher. So there's four of us. And I didn't realize I've only been doing this for a few weeks that it was our Spanish teacher's birthday. So they had arranged to have we take the class in a restaurant. So halfway through the class, they had these desserts came out, four different desserts, and so that we could celebrate Karina's birthday. And I wasn't hungry. The desserts looked good; they were all different, so everybody got to choose their flavor. But I realized I wasn't hungry, and so I just said in a really nice way, "I'm playing with this new deal where I'm just trying not eating when unless I'm hungry." And the old Martha might have felt like obligated, like I don't want to make a scene, or, it was so nice of them to go to the trouble. I don't want to insult anybody. But I decided to just be really honest about it. And they all enjoyed their dessert. And I honestly didn't want it. Um, and I said, I'll package it up. And then I realized I offered it too because it was a flavor that Karina, the Spanish teacher, liked. And so while she had had her little treat, I said, "We want to take this home?" And she was thrilled to take another one home so that she could share with her husband. And so I felt like that was a just real win-win because there are so many other, like I said, I might have felt obligated or I might have felt deprived. And I didn't feel any of those things. It was her birthday. It wasn't my birthday. I wasn't hungry. And so for me, that was a big victory.
For sure. I think back to all those years when you work in an office and it's, somebody's birthday and HR rolls out the big birthday cake and
Yep.
people gather and you have a piece of cake. And how
Yep.
many people were you even hungry?
Right. You
It's
do
interesting.
It's sort of interesting. Are you doing it just because? Are you really
Hmm.
want it? Or is it just conditioning? And so if you can just step back and assess for yourself. I mean, there would have been nothing wrong with having the dessert if I really wanted it. I mean, that would have been fine too. But I think it's just about being intentional, and doing what you really not and what really want, and not just acting on remote control. And so the more we can
Hmm.
just give ourselves a little space around that. I mean, we can really create these wins for ourselves because that was, like I said, it would have been a huge amount of calories that I didn't really want or need. And I think ideally we want to move towards eating when we're hungry, right? There's always going to be times of celebration and things, but you have to be asking yourself why. I mean, the purpose of food ultimately, right, is to fuel our body. And so if we're eating when we're not hungry, I think it confuses everything the more I think about it. So I wanted to share that because it was a big win it was a big pat on the back for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So mindless eating, chapters 1 and 2. We'll tackle today. And so again, chapter 1, there may be a little bit of repeat from what I talked about in the last podcast, but Mindless Eating by Brian Wansink explores all the ways that we're influenced and all the ways we eat more than we realize because of habits, because of influences in our environment. So it's sort of an anti-diet, I would say, approach to, or an clearly restrictive deprivation type diet approach um, to weight loss. Do you have any thoughts that you want to share based on your reading of chapter 1, or do you want me to just
I took some notes, which I'm going to be referring to, so I'll keep looking down.
yeah,
But
I've got a few notes here too.
I think surprises, things I found hard to believe, maybe.
So what are some of those? Because I think it is. I think a lot of people read this stuff and say that can't be true, right?
Just generally, people eat more when you give them a bigger container.
Right?
It's like it sounds logical, but at the same time,
Why would we be influenced if we were really
what?
tuned into our hunger? Why would the size
Right,
of the container have anything to do with it, right?
right.
And so there's this great experiment. He does what he's called the popcorn experiment, right? Did you find that just fascinating?
It was stale. Excuse me, stale old popcorn. That it was. He said it was safe to eat, but it wasn't. It didn't taste very
It
good.
wasn't fresh at all. And basically he had this lab where he could replicate, movie theaters, restaurants, things like that. And so they on the college campus, they invite people in for a movie, and part of the deal is, free popcorn in exchange for maybe probably rating the movie or whatever. And behind the scenes, people don't know. They're given a medium-sized container and then a larger size container randomly. And they just have this set up so that they can, they give people the popcorn. It's all been weighed ahead of time. And then as they're leaving, they have them fill out a questionnaire, and they don't know they're putting their popcorn on a scale. So they're able to know like how much popcorn did these people eat, depending upon whether or not the container was a sort of a medium size or a bigger size. And again and again and again, and like he says, you could watch the people like they and this was right after lunch, so people weren't hungry. They knew they had all had lunch, so it wasn't like, well, I just ate it because I was hungry. That wasn't an excuse. So they removed all those variables, and like you said, you could see people like putting the popcorn in the mouth and then like, what is this? But then reaching it again, and that's like, and I think that was the first, again, this was where I got excited because I felt like suddenly I could relate to a lot of these behaviors. Because have you ever eaten something where you didn't really like it, but it was there, and so you kept eating it? I mean, I've done that. And so,
And you're even as you're eating it, you're thinking, this tastes terrible.
right? But then
Why am I eating this? But
you
yeah.
do it. And so, and I think a lot of us beat ourselves up. We think there's something wrong with us. We think we have no self-control. All of this negative self-talk that we inflict upon ourselves, and I think that was the other thing that I just loved about this book, that I saw that I wasn't broken, that I was engaging in behavior that many, many people were engaging in, and the fact that they demonstrated that if it's in a bigger container, and they did it with other things like frozen yogurt, I mean, all different ways that they studied this phenomenon, the size of your dishes, the size of your soup bowls, popcorn. And so, yeah, so one big takeaway is that the bigger the serving you're given, the more you're going to eat, regardless of, hunger. And like I said, a lot of people might poo-poo it, but that's what gets us into trouble, that we think
Right.
that we're not influenced by these things. And it turns out we are. Yeah.
Yeah, I found this interesting too. Simply thinking that a meal will taste good can lead you to eat more.
Right.
So again, regardless of the quality of the food, and that I think that was the one they served a glass of Cabernet with the meal, where they scrubbed the label off the bottle and half the dining room got a California cab and half the room got a North Dakota cab or something like
But it
that.
was the same wine.
The same wine.
Right. But the label suggests that again, anybody who drinks wine knows that North Dakota is not a place that is known for its wine. So it was really just the same wine, but people were given this complimentary glass of wine and then asked to rate their whole dining experience. And the food was the same, the music was the same, the servers were the same.
Right, but I think some people, they said, like, they used big fancy French words to describe the meal. Others, it was like written
In a more
simply
plain
on
way.
a right, right.
Right. So all of these ways we're influenced, right, to eat. Like if we, like you're saying, we think it's going to taste good. Maybe you read
Mm-hmm.
this positive review of a restaurant and you're going out to try it and you already have these expectations that it's going to be wonderful. I mean, that will influence, right, how much you enjoy the meal and how much you eat, right? And so, I mean, the book is just full of all of these
Yeah.
ways that we're influenced without realizing it. So
And
yeah,
here's one too that I know that I'm guilty of that I can actually not deny. Almost any sign with a number promotion, for example, 2 for $2, 10 for $10, leads us to buy 30 to 100% more than we normally would.
yeah. So we know now, and again, so all of this helps you. I mean, I felt like again, there were so many lessons in this book, right, that I took into my life and reminders. And you see that over again, right, in promotions. Well, restaurants will promote sort of buy one, get one, right? Eat an entree, take something home. Grocery stores, right, are notorious
Grocery
for
stores, yeah.
their end caps and their displays at the checkout and all designed to entice you to buy more. You
Mm-hmm.
walk in for one item and suddenly you see a sign where it's, three for whatever, whenever there's a number, three for two or buy whenever that number is involved and you end up buying more. And consequently, if you buy it and bring it home, if we're talking food, you're going to end up eating more, right? Because the more
Mm-hmm.
plentiful it
Mm-hmm.
is. Yeah. They talked a lot about the bigger containers, right? Those Costco size containers and how dangerous they are, or overcooking, um left the danger of leftovers, and the fact that if they're just there, the more you cook, the more you plate, the more you're going to eat, regardless of whether you're hungry or not. And so just these light bulb moments about, and again, the cool thing I loved about this book was it didn't just provide you with that information, it also provides you with ways to offset it, right? And to mitigate it
Mm.
and steps you can take to prevent being influenced or affected by these kinds of things. So they talked a lot about if you buy the big container because it is so much cheaper, pre-portion it out, you know, put it in the little Ziploc bags. If you bought the huge box of cereal, put it in a smaller Tupperware container and all these steps you can take so that you're not as affected by these things.
Well, I think of it in response to the size plate you're using.
Hmm.
If we if we don't realize we are eating a little less than we need, we don't feel deprived.
Right.
If we don't feel deprived, we are less likely to backslide and find ourselves overeating to compensate for everything we have foregone.
Right. So
The
he
key
talks,
lies in the mindless margin,
right.
which
So
is
I
what
love the concept again of this mindless margin, right? The fact that we all sort of eat what we eat on any given day at a sort of it's going to be give or take, right? And we know when we've eaten a huge amount more, and if we suddenly go on a diet and we suddenly cut back the amount of food we're eating in a significant way, we're going to be hungry and we're going to know it. We're going to start focusing on that. But there's this place, like he's saying, where you can play, where you take just a little bit less and your body doesn't miss it, especially if you put it on a smaller plate, right? And so he talks a lot about this really effective way to just like when you're going to serve up your dinner, take 20% less than you typically would, or 20% less than you
Mhm,
think you want.
mhm.
Put it on a smaller plate so it doesn't look skimpy. Fill in that extra part that you depleted with veggies, right? So bump up your veggies a bit. And it's just in these little changes, this mindless margin where you can effectively slowly start to lose weight in a way that just doesn't feel uncomfortable. You can just do it and it doesn't hurt,
And you don't have to eliminate certain foods. You're still eating the same foods.
right?
It's just a more it's the quantity is more in alignment with probably what we actually need versus
Right. Because we know our portions are just keep getting, dishes of getting bigger and bigger, portions are getting bigger and bigger. So we don't even realize what a healthy portion would look like anymore. And it would look probably very skimpy compared to what we're used to. And our eyes, are bigger than our stomach often. So by shrinking the plate, it's really magical because,
Mhm.
you don't feel hungry. You don't really miss it because it's so gradual. I did the same thing, I had a golden retriever, my dear Franny, and she was a little bit overweight. The vet had said, she needs to lose a few pounds. And again, it's so interesting. I mean, we can learn a lot if we start to think about it, right? When our dog needs to lose a little bit of weight, we don't put him on res, res, a major shift in what they eat, right? We keep feeding them what we feed them, but we just limit the quantity a little bit. So it used to be she got sort of a rounded, cup full of food twice a day. And what I did was just started just again the 20% thing or less. I just gave her a little bit less, just under that cup, and maybe one or two less treats. And lo and behold, the next time she went to the vet, she was where she needed to be, again, in a way that didn't feel overwhelming to her, didn't have to like put her on different food or take any major steps. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. A lot of times we
Mhm.
think we need to lose weight and we think we have to change up everything that we're doing, when maybe the easiest first step is to just look at the amounts and the portions, would be a heck of a lot easier, right? To keep eating what we like, but just eating a little less of it.
Well,
I mean, how much less overwhelming is that than trying to say I have to go on a Mediterranean diet, I have to go on a paleo diet, I have to go plant-based overnight. It's just so much less overwhelming. Uh, so yeah, I love that.
yeah, I'm trying to just look at my notes from chapter 1. What else? Is there anything else?
I think those are he talked again to the 20% less. He talked about the pre-plating of the food. This whole concept of put your, cook your food in the
Mm.
kitchen, put the food on your plate, then take your plate to the table instead of doing family style. And again, it's another way to just slow yourself down, enjoy what's there, wait 20 minutes before having seconds, just to give your body a chance to catch up, get that brain connection going. Because oftentimes, if we eat quickly, we're going to overeat before we know it. By the time our stomach catches up to our brain, we're going to feel overfull and uncomfortable and be angry with ourselves. How do we do that again? So the whole slowing down, and again, if it's not on the table, it's just a way to easily give yourself a little more time. And Rod and I've played with this one a lot. It's like, oh, it tasted good. I could eat, it's that feeling of, oh, I could eat a little more, but we'll just sit here and wait a little bit. And lo and behold, you wait and you're fine. So that's a real powerful one. Yeah. So I think we've covered the major concepts from chapters 1 and 2. First of all, you're not broken. You're human. Deprivation diets are really hard to stick to for any amount of time because our brains and our bodies and our environment work against it. There's an easier way, where we can just start to change our environment, start to realize and notice the ways we're being influenced without realizing it, little habit shifts we can make that don't feel overwhelming. And I loved his whole concept with the mindless margin. If you think about it, he has this really simple math program where he says if you take for example, you eat 150 calories or less per day, which maybe you give up one soda or something like that, something that wouldn't really feel like very much. At the end of the year, you just cut off the zero. And so if you did that every day for a year, you'd be 15 pounds less, which, you know, can be in a way that didn't feel overwhelming. Because how
I
many
think you said
people
eat 150 calories. It's reduce your calorie
reduce? I'm
intake by
sorry.
100.
Did I say it wrong? So you want to reduce your calories by 150. You want to eat 150 calories less. And by doing that, you would be 15 pounds less. So at the end of the year, if you did that every day for a year. So for example, same thing, if you 200 calories, if you ate 200 calories less every day for a year, at the all other things being equal, right? Then you would lose 20 pounds in a year. And a lot of people will say, well, that's nothing, but how many of us just get so we go up and down and up and down and up and down. Maybe we're at the end of the year we didn't, in a much more up and down way, didn't get to that point. So something to
Hmm.
consider and to play with, I think.
Well, yeah, and he quotes an article, an article by two doctors, where if people just reduced their caloric intake by 100 calories a day, it would essentially wipe out, um, didn't say obesity, but the overweight problem
For a
that we're
lot of
having.
for a major piece of the population. And
Hmm.
that's like, I think there's many people who, they were fine for many years, and then slowly, every decade the scale keeps just going up and up and up, and it's like, how did this happen? And it's just by that little bit of excess. And so if
Right.
we realized these little shifts we could make to minimize that pain and suffering, it's pretty exciting to realize that there are ways that we can begin to address this that just don't have to hurt, you know. I'm all about simple,
Well, and we
easy,
talk a lot about tiny habits and
right?
small changes, and this is really that. It's
It
you
is.
know, it's an extra glass of water, it's one push up, it's
Yeah, this is really that tiny habit, simple changes approach that I'm so uh, excited about and so enamored of. And because I think it is the answer that's sustainable, you know.
right,
And
right.
I think there have been a lot of comments that have come in from folks that we've got on a spreadsheet now for topics that we'll continue to address over these next weeks in these podcasts. And a lot of it is that discussion of people. I've done this so long and it has felt like effort for so long, and I'm just tired. I'm tired of the effort. I'm tired of the struggle. Um, on one hand, I don't want to throw in the towel, but
Mm.
and here's, I think this is a solution. This is an alternative to, I understand you're tired. It doesn't have to continue to be a struggle if you explore what we're
Hmm.
sharing with you here over these next few weeks with mindless eating and these tiny shifts that you can make.
Yeah, I think of so many diet plans or special diets I've tried in the past where they essentially have you clean out your pantry and refrigerator and get rid of whatever it is that they want you to eliminate from your diet, and then you have to go shopping and spend several $100s for all these special foods. And there's an excitement. I mean, undeniably for me personally, there's an excitement like, ooh, this is it.
A
This is
whole
the
new life.
solution. And then either it gradually it just starts wearing off, and it just becomes too hard, too difficult to because everybody's busy their day to day. There's so many things we're busy with every day. Diet shouldn't have to be one of them.
Right. It's just not practical. I mean, like you
Right.
said, in the excitement, we all get excited. Like, this is it, my life. I mean, but we're excited about a thought, right? We're excited about
Hmm.
some thought in our
An
mind
idea.
about,
Yeah.
it's not the when what happens is we get excited about this fantasy in our mind, and then the reality of the day, like you're saying, the reality of the day-to-day implications of this bumping up against the busyness of our lives and all of our deeply ingrained habits and um, our lifestyle. And and again, so you're just back to where you were, um,
Right.
many, many hundreds of dollars, like in debt, or not in debt necessarily, but lost. Um,
Sure.
and
And
yeah, and so
by comparison, if you could do your same grocery shopping, you're buying the same foods, you're cooking the same meals, but maybe, like you said, you're drinking one less soda a day, or half a Snickers bar less a day, or I mean, very small changes,
right,
pretty effortless.
right. A little less food, no
You probably
second.
won't even notice,
Right.
and it could make a huge. You have to be patient. You have to let it work,
Mhm.
give it time, but
But again, I think the success from making these little shifts, you do these little shifts and you get excited and it builds, and suddenly you're finding other
right.
ways to make more little shifts. And that's what I found even for me after all these years, just in the conversation, like I said, that spurred from me speaking with you about slowing down and reevaluating. Because there was a time when I was really good and tuned in about putting the fork down between mouthfuls and stopping when I got to that point, or remembering to only eat when I was hungry. And then suddenly you just revert back to these old behaviors. You're
Mhm.
stepping into the pantry, you're grabbing a cookie because you happen to see it there. You're suddenly not staying tuned in and you're cleaning out your plate. You're putting the food back on the table family style instead of pre-plating, uh, reaching for the bigger plate instead of the smaller plate. And so I think we need these reminders. Um, but then, like I said, this excitement that you don't have to change everything drastically. Just start
Mhm.
small, start steady, and it builds, and the excitement builds. And again, that's
Yeah,
why
and I
that's why
think, when you're able to tighten your belt a little more, or you start having small victories, I
Yep.
think that then
Yeah,
provides the encouragement and um, the motivation to keep going.
yeah, yeah. So
So
so good.
exciting.
So thanks for reading along with me. I know because you've heard me talking about this book for years and years and years. So I'm happy that we're doing this. And we'll be back in our next session to explore chapters 3 and 4.
Thanks, everyone. And if you found this video helpful, please hit the subscribe and like button. And if there's anyone you'd like to share it with, please do.
All right, we'll be back soon. Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.